Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. It has been a hell of a week, and for reasons that I can't let you know about just yet. Well, I could, but I'm just choosing to make it its own video. There's something I've been kind of alluding to in the past couple of weekly Q&As, maybe on State of the Realm or in some other videos, especially the channel update video, but I'll have something more formal this Wednesday, likely in place of a retro style video. On top of that, the month of February is just an awful month on YouTube. Fortunately, with the content plan, things have been relatively okay, but something weird's been going on with YouTube's algorithm. I'm noticing it when I'm watching my own videos, like what it's starting to recommend to me are things that are like not even tangential to the things that I normally watch or would consume. And the means through which like videos are just getting into my like viewer range has been strange. And I've noticed that happening with my own videos and the stats on their reach as well. So I think something's going on under the hood in YouTube right now, which makes sense given that YouTube's undergoing a big change that's leading to some of those things. What's weird is though, the most recommended videos for me are videos of me. Like I would ever want to watch back a video that I made of me outside of, the rendering and editing process. Ugh. But either way, this week is also going to be a big week for a number of reasons, but fortunately, I'm way ahead on my content production schedule, so much so that I pretty much have a guaranteed video almost for every day over the next several weeks. And that's not factoring in that I'm going to be taking some time to make some bonus videos and content on stuff like Octopath, Theatrhythm, and even just the general Final Fantasy franchise. I really want to take some time to be able to focus on these things, and thus the regular-ish schedule I've created for stuff like the weekly Q&A and stuff like the retro series, which is going to be ongoing for, quite a few months, given the number of things we have to look back on. And anything Final Fantasy 16 related, Final Fantasy 14 related, Deep Dungeon. I haven't felt so secure about a content release schedule like this for quite some time. And it's refreshing, given everything else that's going on, to feel that way, because I really don't want to have like a month of no content on the YouTube channel like I had in November, and like I usually like once or twice a year that'll happen, normally around November, weirdly enough. Either way though, that's it for the intro to this video. Thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon. You guys don't have to support. All of my content is available for free here on YouTube, but anything such as the Patreon or super thanks are always appreciated. But just remember, you never need to do them. I'm never going to lock content behind those things. Either way, with that, let's get into the Q&A, because while I'm not tired and while I've got good energy right now, I haven't eaten yet today. So I'd like to go do that right after this is done. All right, question number one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Hap, hope you're doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I've been enjoying seeing you go through the history of Final Fantasy, now in multiple ways with your Final Fantasy history videos. Looking forward to more of them as they come. Thank you. I've been going through a bit of Final Fantasy's history myself as of late, but a more niche corner of it. You see, Theatrhythm Final Bar line, I always want to say Theatrhythm. I don't know why. Included some interesting songs to me, being the ones from albums like Bra Bra Final Fantasy, Brass to Bravo, and SQ Chips, etc. I knew about Distant Worlds, Black Mages, Primals, Pulse, but I've never heard of any of these other albums. So I began a wonderful dive into as many of the Final Fantasy and Square Arrangement albums as I could find. I've been having a lot of fun with it, learning about the Star Onions and Non Amigos from 11, the Xmas albums, oh goodness, the Xmas albums are so bad, with the weird Shadow Lords theme, and the official album named Bear SQ, which is just the best. It's been neat seeing all they've done with the company's music over the years, from chiptune albums to an Irish Celtic Final Fantasy IV album and much, much more. Yeah, there's a lot of wild ones. My question is a simple one. What are some of your favorite remixes of Final Fantasy songs, whether from crossovers or spin-offs, or from albums or concerts, if you have any? Take any chance to gush about any songs from the series that you love. So this is kind of a weird answer, but some of my favorite remixes and rearrangements come from the Final Fantasy Record Keeper mobile game, one of which is, that is one of its own categories in Theatrhythm Final Bar line. Now, it's no longer available in North America, but the game is still ongoing in Japan. And it's just got a lot of really, really good remixes. Some of them a little bit faster paced, some of them a lot more frantic. And I think that should be obvious from the way that they play inside of Theatrhythm Final Bar line. But they're really, really good, especially the remixes that were done for Ifrit, Garuda, and Titan, Final Fantasy XIV's version. It's like a semi-dubstep version of Garuda that I really, really enjoy, but it just goes so hard. So if I could recommend one that's kind of like tucked away in a corner. It's not as ambiguous as stuff like, you know, the Brasta Bravo, which is actually another one of my favorites just in general. But it would be that. It would be the Record Keeper rearrangements and reorchestrations and remixes that they did for that game. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hiya, Haps. Hi. Hope everything is going well. It's going all right. I've been considering doing some world prog. I like that. I like the casual. I've just been considering it, you know, or more hardcore week one type progs of Savage. Nice. I've done a more mid-core, harder prog, but I've always been under the impression that I should have like hundreds or near perfect. No. It's actually a thing. Is it just, are you good? Join us thing. It's literally just people who prog well. Dude, there are people who have like awesome logs who are the worst people to prog with because they play like they're logging in prog and they are terrible, awful at it. You need to have a prog mindset. Now, if you have both a prog mindset and those near perfect logs, great. But a lot of the times there's no direct overlap between the two, especially not in the prog environment itself. Now, there is something to be said. You don't want to have nothing but bad logs going into that kind of environment because especially with Savage Week 1, those end of the fight DPS checks are tight, which is why a lot of the times people don't even look at that. They'll look at the experience that you have with those prior experiences. But if you don't have that experience, then things like that become a little bit more important. So you do not need that. You absolutely do not. But you need to be able to prove in a place like a trial format that you can quickly learn mechanics and perform your job or role at a sufficient level. And it means that even if it's not perfect, can still be improved upon in some in a way that's not like if you don't do it, it's like you're dooming your group. You know, like if you're like, oh, I died to that one mechanic because I'm not really good at that style of mechanic. But I can always work on that. Or, you know, I didn't really use my defensives properly here, but, you know, I can always do that better. If it's something like that that can be improved upon more easily, then that's okay. But no, you don't need the near perfect log. That's the majority of world proggers aren't in that category. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Happy. Hi. I hope you've been doing wonderful today. Octopath has been fantastic, so I'm going to say yes. You're the most extreme workaholic I know among several creators, streamers, so my question is one born of practicality. What do you sit on? An awesome Herman Miller Aeron. This was a gift that I got several years ago, and this thing has barely shown any wear or tear. I have like nervous tics where I like to like dig at things with my nails like this. Like you'll see me itching my face a lot of times. That's a nervous tic. And I get that a lot when I'm doing a lot of public speaking. And even though this is behind a monitor and it's at home, I still consider it public speaking, so it just kind of has that effect for me. Also, I notice I'm peaking a little bit, so I'm gonna turn my microphone down. Apologies in advance for anything. I'll have seen that in the audio and adjusted it before it gets to, you know, it gets out, I suppose. But I just noticed, I looked over and I was like, oh, is it not recording audio? Do I need to start over? No, it was just in the red. And it's just because my microphone's been auto adjusting, despite the fact that I have been turning the auto adjust off. So yeah, that should have brought me down to a much better level at that point. Either way, Herman Miller, it's an amazing chair. It's a super expensive chair, although I think they do have a gaming line now that's a bit more affordable and probably just as good. But generally, just a good office chair is better than a gaming brand chair. And Herman Millers are normally made to be a high-end ergonomic office chair. It's made of like a mesh material, so it doesn't really like hold in your sweat, and it makes it more pliable, so when you're sitting on it, it conforms to you a bit more. The only thing that's not that way are the armrests, and that's the only place I have any wear and tear, because with my nails digging, I dig at like the actual sides, like you can hear me hitting them right now, the armrests, and so I've like peeled away some of that, but not even that much, and only on the right side. My left side is completely undamaged, I suppose. But they're also really expensive. Like most people can't realistically make the unless you like work at home and you sit at the PC for so many hours, it's really hard to justify buying a Herman Miller. Like that's probably the biggest struggle that there is. But if you can afford a Herman Miller, I would highly advise doing it because it's by far the best chair I've sat in. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Namaste, Mr. Happy. Namaste. Hope you're having a nice day. It'll be nice after I eat, because my brain's not even working all the way for these questions, because I got some chicken thighs in there that I'm going to roast up, and then I'm going to chop them up and make some pasta with a little bit of butter, some cream cheese, some Italian seasoning, salt, pepper, just going to do some, it's really basic, but really nice. I've got a few options around, but I really need to hit up the grocery store at the same time. Do you think they should introduce new jobs in the future that could potentially share gear or consolidate ninja gear with other existing sets? Yeah, we could really do with not having 3 different melee sets. I mean, it's either that or they need to adjust the way that they go about gearing for the melees as a whole, because it's just so annoying having so many different melee sets. We actually talked about this on Mog Talk, about how the gearing system hasn't really kept up with the game. We're still so restricted on how much gear that we can possibly obtain, whether that be because of weekly restrictions or just not enough options. And the fact that there's 3 different melee sets is, a contributing factor to that. I do think we will see another scouting job and adjustments to the gear system before we see the consolidation of scouting gear into striking or maiming. But yeah, they always assume there's going to be something more added to the existing sets. Hashtag Mr. Happy on a Monday. Well, it's a Sunday for me, but a Monday for you. Hey, hi. Hope you're doing well this week. We'll see. Oh, you mean last week? Yeah, I got a lot of things taken care of last week. So while it was a stressful week, it was also like the relief that I had gotten something very, very important done again. I'll talk about that in a later video. This was my first Savage tier, and I've loved it. Great. Even with the breakdown of my static looming after getting to phase 2 of P8S. Not so great. I played melee as Reaper, but I've noticed in PF that healer and tank can make or break a group. Yeah, pretty much. So I want to branch out. So I started playing more Sage. Love Sage. I was terrible on Sage before I started raiding, but now running level 90 dungeons, I have no trouble. I was going to slowly reprogram on healer to learn, but what are some ways you can go about relearning on a new class? How did you used to do it before you had the knowledge you have of doing it so much? So I would say that no matter how much knowledge you have of doing it, making sure you are proficient enough on a job to take it into Savage and Ultimate is something that I think everyone goes through a little bit differently and is different depending on the job you're picking. Now for healer, it is probably one of the weirder ones to program, because depending on the setting you're learning it in, it changes the way you think about the role as a whole. So if you start learning healer in places like the Party Finder, you kind of start to get used to habits that are considered bad in like static style raiding. And that's like trying to overcompensate for the other healer, because communicating with them and telling them to do certain things more, or that they're not doing something enough. When you're in a static, it's kind of a given that you can have those style of conversations in order to improve the likelihood of the group succeeding. But in the Party Finder, it's generally, just kind of shut your mouth. And if the group doesn't do well enough, then the group just didn't do well enough, So when you're learning healer in that environment, you kind of make bad habits to make up for other people's bad habits. Whereas in a static, you'll, instead go the communication route. So specifically speaking to you, I think that's probably going to be the biggest thing, is you're going to feel the desire or need to overheal a little bit and to make up for some of the difference that is being made by the other healer. But then the big thing that you'll want to improve the most on is recognizing when you do have a good healer on the other side, because that allows you to play the role a lot more like it's intended to be played. A lot less GCD healing, not needing to worry so much about where all of your OGCDs went because you had to spend extra ones because you didn't know what the other healer was going to do. And that comes with experience. And that honestly comes with also playing more than a single healer, because you want to be able to recognize, we're not getting in a size here and I normally have a size there. Or, normally by this point in the fight, I have 2 lilies, but I'm not noticing any lilies being used. You really like to be able to recognize where it makes sense to use a cooldown. And then when you're in the Party Finder or another static, you can recognize where it's not being used and kind of wonder and question or consider ways to improve about that. So that's more specifically with healer. It is very case to case, but all it just takes is practice. The answer for the general question is you just practice, and you just know that you are going in with the intention of improving, and that you're not just instantly great at it. Because if you think that, then you're just going to play like shit and you're never going to do better. And that's not good for anyone, yourself included. All right, this didn't have a hashtag, but I saw the hey happy, figured I'd stop on it. So you're lucky. I listen, I read things before, I just use the hashtag to know if it's something that I should definitely stop at. I'm curious if you have any ideas or predictions how 14 will continue to add buttons for future abilities. I think the way they're doing it now, they either upgrade existing abilities, put new abilities at the end of combos that are strings of existing abilities, or prune an old ability to put a new ability on there. I mean, those are the three major ways they're going to do it, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I'd be surprised if all role actions are eventually removed or consolidated into existing job abilities. I don't think so. I think the role action is their means of consolidating the skills, because that used to be something that we did. You know, we used to have all those skills on individual classes and jobs, and then they moved them. So I don't see them going backwards with that. I just think it's, I just think everything that I said is realistically the answer. That's what they've already been doing for a few expansions now, and it's been effective. So I just don't see them changing the approach they've already been using. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hi. Hope you're doing well. Same to you. Since you mentioned unspoken rules, I've been wondering what other unspoken rules exist in the game. Obviously, except the ninjas that don't usually LB3 and the red mages shouldn't. Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that, like I said last week, I couldn't remember because I haven't played much Melee as of late about which jobs are LB3 priority, but that I hope it was more clear that I was acknowledging that there is a priority. I just wasn't up to date on what that priority was. Because I've seen a lot of people say Monk should do it. I've seen people say Ninja. Reaper should definitely not do it. I know that much for a fact. Anything gauge related tends to want to avoid LBing, whereas jobs that are just like cooldown based, like, you know, Summoner or Black Mage in this example could do it. Other unspoken rules that exist, man, I don't, you know, they're unspoken, so I'm not super versed in them. It's easier for me to be like brought to a situation and then be able to identify if there is an unspoken rule in that situation than it is for me to kind of pull from a wealth of knowledge and just think of an unspoken rule. Because like I said, it's unspoken, so it's not really fresh in my mind. I'm sure there is one. I mean, generally, that's don't speak in the party finder. That's an unspoken, unironically, that's an unspoken rule is don't speak in the party finder because you can't get banned if you don't talk. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's too broad of a question for me to answer too accurately. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hi, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I'm really excited about the upcoming FanFest in Vegas and hope to get tickets to attend. Hey, me too. Will there likely be any official raves at FanFest? No. There's concerts. There's the piano concert, which I assure you is not a rave, and then there's the rock concert. But no, they don't do raves. They you know, it's probably smart. Dude, I remember going to an official rave that was at a convention years and years ago. And listen, a rock concert and a piano concert, way less a liability than a rave, because the types of people, listen, I love EDM. It's probably the style of music that I've grown up on and listened to the most. No surprise being from New Jersey, right? But every time I go to a rave, it's a very particular environment. Now, I'm not saying those types of situations don't exist in other environments, because they absolutely do. You know, I've been to a few rock concerts where there's much the same. But I don't think they want that on their plate. I just don't think they want it at all. And I wouldn't know how to find the unofficial ones because I'm old now and I go back to my apartment when it gets to be like 10 p.m. So that's like a really, that's late for me. I'm like, oh man, getting home at 10 p.m. That sucks. It's so late. Yeah, I used to be up till like 7 in the morning. You know, you go get the breakfast menu at McDonald's before going to bed instead of in the morning after you wake up. So maybe not the hippest or coolest person to ask about that now. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Happy. Hi. I hope you're doing well. You too. I'd like to ask if, especially in Prague, you've noticed a discrepancy between instance timers and food timers. My theory is that the instance timer pauses every time you wipe up until the little circle disappears, but the food timer ticks on. Yeah. No, that's accurate. You can see that. When you wipe, you can see the instance timer briefly. So I'm fairly certain you're correct. I mean, I could literally just... This is something I never think about it, but I can literally observe that right now. I got a Twitch stream open right now, and I know that this person is going to wipe like very, very soon. So while in fact, they're wiping right now. So it's, let's see, 82:25 when the screen went black. And what does it say when the screen is not black anymore? Any day now. 82:25. Yeah, I don't know. That's not a theory. That's something that takes about 2 seconds to test, and it took me about 2 seconds to say. But yeah, no, your food timer definitely still ticks on during that time, because your food timer never lines up perfectly with it. It's always off by like a little bit, I feel. But that being said, I you know what though, I can confirm that for the little circle, but I can't do it at a glance for food. I would need to watch them over a longer period of time. I like Square Enix to fix this in either direction. Just make the match so we don't have the awkward decision whether or not to pop food for another one of the last few pulls of an instance during prog. If they match, it doesn't matter. Have you noticed a discrepancy between food timers? No, because I don't care. Because I just eat the food and it's pennies to me. So I don't really care. But here's the thing. It's never going to match up perfectly no matter what, even if you do this. The big thing, in my opinion, that creates food timer discrepancies is not something like this. It's when you exit an instance before the instance timer is up, which is something most people will do. Be like, oh, this fight is 12 minutes long. We're going to leave it at 11 minutes and then queue in. And then that next instance is where your food timer really falls out of alignment, I suppose. Not to mention just, if maybe the group just randomly leaves because somebody just had to go AFK for a few minutes. So then you're leaving at the 87-minute mark, but then you go back in. It's those situations that I notice that cause it more than, is some sort of, I guess, misalignment between the two. But they're never going to change that. So that's a fruitless hope. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, you doing all right? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. You must be doing all right. You got a lot of text here. All these years later, how do you currently feel about 15? I like 15 when it came out. I recognize some very clear problems with it, but especially after the Royal Edition DLC came out and after, Royal and PC Edition came out and the Arden DLC. I just don't like the way it was handled, but a lot of the times I found a lot of positives in what they were trying to do. I mean, the Comrades DLC had a fantastic sort of adjustment to the way that the game's magic system worked, with the more supportive roles and the magic not hitting your allies. It felt like what the magic should have been in the main game had it not been the way that it was. Even if they added means of getting around that in the main game itself. And then, not being able to swap party members over time, that was gradually rectified. The Arden DLC was just genuinely fun with a lot of lore dumps in there for people who didn't keep up with the other various means of keeping up with it, which it shouldn't be expected. It was spread across a bunch of different media, which made it really tough to do because of the conditions with which Final Fantasy 15 was even created. I mean, it all boils back down to the Versus 13 problem, that a game that was so horribly mismanaged and misproduced, and it just never came to exist and barely even began to exist despite all the years that it was being worked on, led to a lot of the disasters we had with Final Fantasy 15. That being said, I can replay it really easily. I enjoy it a decent bit, and I appreciate that even though there isn't a lot of need for combat depth in the game, I think a lot of more hardcore Final Fantasy 15 fans will know that there is actually a lot of combat depth. It just doesn't matter because you don't need any of it. You can do some impressive stuff, but it's completely useless in terms of, I guess, how applicable it is to the average player, or how much it even matters to the average player just trying to beat the game. So, I'm a 15 enjoyer, but I also know just how many issues it possibly has. Now, I noticed that you still have a bunch of stuff under here, but it also says you can skip this paragraph if pressed for time. Enjoying my time with it, similar to Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. I like it. My main wish was to have additional expansive areas. But instead of making Forspoken, Luminous would have been much better served making a PS5 enhanced edition of 15. I do think a big thing with 15 is that it needs to be, I don't want to say dead and buried, but progress on it needed to be dead and buried, because it was kind of just this, it was a constant reminder of its own creation and how flawed it was. Final Fantasy 14 has that issue as well. It came from 1.0, which was a complete disaster. And then it kind of just keeps a lot of the technical debt that comes from that is something that has plagued it and still been a shadow that looms over it, even with the advancements they've made in certain areas. 15 was kind of the same. It was a constant reminder that it was made under awful circumstances, and they just had to keep adding to it. And it was just like a constant reminder and a constant kind of dark cloud that sat over the franchise, even if it was, at first, at the very least, a major financial success, given that they made back all the money of development in the first 48 hours, but then lost money on the continued development to however you want to word it, finish it or polish it up or release more content for it. It wasn't the right place to be. It needed to stop being made. And I think making a PS5 version of it should not have been a priority. I do think we need, if they want to go back and kind of reignite kind of something that's not a dark cloud, again, I think that this is a wildly misconceived opinion. Final Fantasy 13 is still stuck on the PS3. Yes, there's a PC version, but there's no PS4 or PS5 version because the PS3 is a disaster. And I really think they need to go back and do that, because when when 13 first came out, I had kind of had preformed opinions, oh, it's not my Final Fantasy game, blah, blah, blah. But when I finally got around to playing it again years later, I realized how much I didn't really feel like that criticism had merit, so much as I just wanted to dislike it because it was different, even though I still kind of liked what it was. I still had issues with it, absolutely, party leader dying, being a game over, some of the weird difficulty stops and like progress stops that they hit you with, but other aspects of it that didn't bother me, they didn't bother me when I played it back again. I was like, oh, never mind. They really need to make sure this comes to the more current consoles, because I know a lot of people who love the 13 franchise and just don't have a great means of playing it now because the PC versions are, ugh. The regular 13 is okay, but 13.2 on PC is, yeah, that needs some work. But either way, I think that in some cases, yes, they do need to go back and revisit these, and maybe one day they revisit this and bring it onto a more modern console. But I also think that they need to look towards the future, and I'm hoping that 16 is a part of that future, and other projects like Theater Rhythm and the Pixel remasters and stuff just define a better time forward for Square Enix. Even if some of it is looking back and trying to reignite fires from before, stuff like Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, I still think it's a better direction than the direction they were starting to go for a while, around 15's development. Hashtag Mr. Happy Alola Mondays. Alola? My cat's name is Aloha. Come on now. Hey, Haps, how's it going? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Your State of the Realm this weekend got me thinking of P8. Do you think Phase 1 is a bit too much? It's such a tight and consistent phase that it can really be a drain. My only point of reference is P4, though, so that could be coloring things. P4, in a lot of ways, was just as stressful. No, I think P8 Phase 1 is actually great, because it really doesn't ask that much of the players, or not as much as a player may think, but it's also still very strict and very tight. I think the only issue is it was the week one, the issues with the HP, where they said they had, not tuned it correctly. And that makes people think maybe it's too much because they still think of that time, but it's really not anymore. Now it's just, mechanics and play your jobs correctly, especially with all the gear available. So no, I don't think it was too much at all. And it's actually the average quality I would like for a final encounter in a raid tier. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy. Hi. Throwing a job question at you this week. Sure. I was wondering, with the dev team completely reworking Dragoon because they have hit a brick wall, are there any other jobs you feel like might hit a wall just like Dragoon, and with nowhere to go and will need it to rework? I'm afraid about that for Black Mage. And here's the thing. Dragoon, I never had much of an attachment to, so I look at it and I get it, right? And at the same time, I'm kind of like, okay, I can see why they're doing that. It makes sense. It really hasn't gotten anything. It's not even that the big thing with Dragoon is it feels like it's gotten almost nothing, right? It's not just that there's nowhere to go. It also felt like the first expansion where they actually got nothing. And Black Mage is in a similar boat where they didn't get nothing. They fixed up its early game. They refined some of the gameplay issues it had in Shadowbringers still, gave it more mobility, more power, and made sure it was easier to access that power on demand, something that makes sense for the 2-minute meta. The problem is, it is at that same critical point where what else are they going to do? Give it a third polyglot stack, give it Despair 2, Thunder 5. What are they going to do? And you know what? I don't know, because I feel like if they felt like they were at that point with Black Mage, they would have already brought it up like they did with Dragoon and Astro, but they didn't. Although I do remember Yoshi P kind of mentioning something along that lines with Black Mage as well. So maybe they do kind of feel like they're getting to that point with it as well. But that job, I'm afraid, because that job is perfect all around right now. And thus, in my opinion, it can only go down. Whereas Dragoon, I could see actually improving from the changes, but it could also go the other. It's 50-50 for me. So yeah, I'm afraid. I'm scared for Black Mages. I really am. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy, you doing all right? I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I'm actually hoping to get some advice for Zodiac Age. I'm a big fan of the setting, presentation, basically everything, except I'm having a lot of trouble with the combat, which is weird since I feel like I don't normally have that problem with JRPGs. excuse me, my characters are dying a lot, and I just don't feel like I have a good handle of the Gambit system. Every time I look at the Gambits, I'm overwhelmed with options and not sure where to start. So the ones I make, I'm not very confident are good. You're going to die a lot in Zodiac Age anyway. The types of enemies you fight just kind of do that to you. It's a lot of reacting to random bullshit. There's two things. One, absolutely turn on wait mode if you're struggling, because you can sit there and make your decisions with all the time in the world. Number two, get used to going into your equipment menu mid-fight and changing equipment if you notice you're being hit by something. And number three, set up at least Gambits to heal. And don't set them for really low HP percentages either. I'd say at the lowest, go 50% for like an auto heal. And other than that, it just becomes about, getting used to enemy. Then it becomes standard RPG stuff, understanding enemy weaknesses, what types of damage work against them, what types of damage they deal, and then just equipping and working around that. But armor is incredibly important in 12. And if you don't go out of your way to get really strong armor, which can be a bit of a pain because of the way the game is designed, that can be a big, big problem. So I'm playing Octopath Traveler 2 right now, but I'm going to talk about Octopath Traveler 1. Leveling in Octopath Traveler doesn't really do a whole lot. What does a lot is getting very strong equipment, which is why going around and stealing stuff super early is such a popular thing to do in that game. Zodiac Age is kind of the same way, where getting really good armor and weapons is a lot more important than grinding the enemies out, except for license points for your boards, because, that's a whole thing as well. And then with Zodiac Age, having a good job combination also helps a lot. So I'd say, though, with the Gambits and everything else that I said, those first three things I mentioned are definitely like the bottom line without like backseating too much. So I would start there and then work outward from there. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy. Hope you're doing well. Hello, and same to you. Bit of a weird question for you, and I'm not sure if you'll answer it, but I wanted to ask for your opinion on a certain matter. Okay, opinion questions are always 50-50. But, I mean, if it makes it into the video, then at the very least, it made it into the video. Last year, I went into Ultimate Rating to try and prove to myself and other casual friends it could be done. After 4 months of the static, we cleared, but my sense of pride and accomplishment seems to have been spoiled by high-end raiders and certain members of the community by saying ooh as an Ultimate doesn't count, and then I didn't achieve anything. Okay, I'm going to say this. You're talking to the wrong people. So I wonder how much of them are saying it to you versus are just saying it. Because I think almost anyone who does a lot of Ultimate looks at ooh and kind of laughs about it, but they don't laugh at people doing Ultimate or Savage for the first time or getting into that level of content for the first time because they want those people in there. So if you're just listening to people like myself or other people say, haha, ooh, what a joke, and using it as a means to undermine your accomplishment, you're putting too much value into what we say based on our experiences, because that's what it's compared to. If you do ooh versus doing Omega Protocol or DSR, it's two completely different worlds. But would I ever tell someone they shouldn't be proud for beating ooh when they haven't done Ultimate before? No. In fact, almost any high-end or hardcore raider is going to recommend that you do that fight because it is the best bridge to get to the gap between Savage and Ultimate. It is like the go-to first recommendation. So I just wonder how much of it is people telling you haven't accomplished something versus you listening to people with just way more experience and how they objectively feel about an encounter that they do not think deserves to be on the same caliber as other encounters. Have you experienced anything like this before? No, because I value my own experiences above what other people tell me their experiences are, because otherwise it's not an experience. At that point, I'm developing an opinion or an emotion based on proxy when I myself know how I feel, and that is by and far. Ultimate Weapon Prog was my biggest I'm going nuts. I beat it prog. That's the one that's it. You're my bitch now. You're my bitch now. Walked off. Super, super pumped about the whole thing, but it's the easiest one looking back. But does that take away from my experience? No, it doesn't at all. And I think that's an important thing to distinguish. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Hap. Hi. I am somewhat new at 14, started playing late Shadowbringers. Nice. And was wondering if you had any advice on getting into Savage. Almost as if you knew that I answered the other question before. I'd love to give them a shot, but they seem so much different. Honestly, my advice is to just do it. You just need to make a party finder or join a party finder that says that it's for brand new people. Or even just if you play with a community, see if anyone wants to jump in, because that's honestly all it takes. And that's my advice, is to just do it. Steel yourself a little bit. You know, like if you're worried about your skill level, then, you know, do some research, do some practice in something like Extreme Trials beforehand. And then when Extreme Trials feel like way too easy for you, then hop into Savage. Like if you want a more direct stepping stone, that's the way to do it, is play Extremes until they feel like a joke to you and you don't die almost ever unless you're memeing, or that you even feel comfortable enough to meme in them, and then go into Savage. Because you'll notice that it doesn't feel as insurmountable as you might be telling yourself it is, and it really isn't in the first place. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, Mr. Happy. Hello. Since Final Fantasy XIV is so successful and 11 is still squeezing out some money, hey, I'd still consider 11 massively successful to this day. What do you think the odds of us getting another FF MMO, not necessarily a 2.0 or anything, but another one? No, not going to happen. Because here's the thing. It's not just that 11 and 14 exist. They have 3 MMOs in their own company, not to mention some live service stuff. They have Dragon Quest X as well. And I don't think they want 4 MMOs, especially because any new MMO they come out with would be a competitor with Final Fantasy XIV, regardless of if it was designed to be the same game or not. So, no, I think that's just stepping on their own toes. They tried that. 14 was supposed to replace 11. They were planning on ending 11. And then 1.0 was such a disaster, they put more resources back into 11 until 14, A Realm Reborn release. And then it went into some maintenance mode. And then they've actually regained a bit of traction as of late. Since they started doing Voracious Resurgence and some of the new updates they've done and quality of life fixes and yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, it's breathed new life into it. But no, I don't think they want to step on their own toes so directly with 14. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy. Hi. Hope you're doing well. Doing all right. I'm a player that first got caught up to current content with 6.0, and I played Summoner that tier and Samurai this tier. I was looking at playing Monk next tier, and your retrospective video was pretty interesting to watch, but I was just curious, why is Anatman useless? The form stuff is obvious. Form shift spam can accomplish the same thing, but is extending your damage buff not worth it? No, because it eats your GCD. And honestly, there's very few opportunities. Like, you don't get me wrong, if there's downtime and Anatman can keep your Twin Snakes buff up, then that's great. But it's such a short and small gain that most people don't care. And if anything, people like to come back to the boss and start a specific rotational set. And a lot of the times Twin Snakes is going to be a part of that no matter what anyway, because they want to get into a rhythm and do a reopener that's like as close to what they're familiar with and not be like, oh, well, I got to keep Twin Snakes here. So when I come back, I want to do this GCD instead because I don't need the Twin Snakes right away and I can Twin Snakes on this. People don't want to do all that because it's such a small gain for what is supposed to be a major job scale. It's just not worth it. So it's just not worth very much at all. So it's just super unexciting. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi. Given some people's complaints with the loot system, I've been seeing a lot of ideas thrown, and I would like your opinion on it. I actually just talked about this on Mog Talk. The idea of being able to up or down trade Savage books. Yeah, we've talked about that a bunch. Especially the big thing is being able to trade down. I think a lot of people are a little apprehensive about trading up. I don't think it matters, honestly, but trading down has been a long time request because a lot of the times people will get like their loot from 6 or 7 and not be able to buy accessories. Like they want to have less accessories to buy by trading, 2 books from 6 for a book from 5, for example. And then also having all of your twines and needing coats, but, not having enough P6 books because you also need, head, hands, boots. So there are actually a lot of reasons to trade those around. And this is already something that's been discussed quite a bit by the community. I've discussed it as well. And yeah, it would just be a perfectly reasonable thing to have because it doesn't really matter. It doesn't hurt anyone. It only helps. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello and well wishes. Same to you. My question for you is probably a quick one, but I wanted to know your thoughts on the current difficulty of the content that is released and if you think there's the right stepping stone from dungeons to ultimates. Take game mechanics and past knowledge the game teaches you from Realm Reborn all the way to Endwalker. No, they do leaps, and I don't like that. Like, there's nothing that gets you from regular content to extremes to savages to ultimates. The closest stepping stone that I think is in the right place is Ultima Weapon, which we talked about earlier. Everything else, I feel like you have to commit to a jump, and that can be really intimidating. I think that could be resolved with more bosses. I think that could be resolved with kind of like, so we had like Ultima Weapon hard mode and like Earth's Fount and stuff like that in A Realm Reborn. Those actually kind of serve that middle ground where it's not as hard as an extreme, but it's not as difficult, or it's not as easy as a regular trial. And I think we could use more stuff like that. That being said, I don't think the jump is as big as people think it is, unless you're going from Savage to Ultimate this expansion, which is a massive jump because DSR and Top are leagues ahead of things like Abyssos and Asphodelos. So yeah, but even still, I think there is otherwise a gradual climb you can find, but it's just not communicated well enough, and I think it could be improved upon in a number of ways. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hi. First time watcher, full time lurker. Hey, welcome. I've been playing 14 since PS3 beta. Oh, God. And I've been on consoles ever since. Sorry if you've answered this before. I'm sure I've answered a lot of these questions before. If I was afraid of answering the questions again, I wouldn't even do this style of video. It's just not worth it. Being on console, my favorite job being a monk, I'm unable to double weave anything compared to those on PC with access to things like exit. Like I was going to say, this is going to be a dependent on where you live kind of thing. And yeah, this is something that's well known across the community. So anything the dev team has said about looking into ping issues to make things fairer? No, because they test things on 150 ping and they test jobs, and there are also guides to playing on 150 ping or higher. But no, there's no indication that this is ever going to improve. And Monk is honestly, even on PC, can get a little chaotic because of your chakras. So it's not even always the smoothest of experiences there either. Because sometimes you wish you could use a weave at a certain time, but it procs it like right next to your GCD, and you don't want to clip the GCD. So then sometimes you're like, I don't know, it could be a little weird. But no, I think you're going to be SOL, and I also wouldn't worry that much. I don't think it's going to hinder you as much as you think it will. You'll just definitely recognize like, man, I wish I could do that there, and that'll kind of be the end of it. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi. Just wondering if the next DLC will bring a new race. Female Hrothgar. That's it. That's the last one we're ever getting. On that note, if they would ever add any of the Beastman tribes as a race, no. The biggest problem with the Beast tribes is gear outfitting. They would need to completely rework how all the gear outfitting systems are done. And honestly, they need to do that anyway, but it's not something they're going to do. They have outright said a very large number of times that they didn't even plan on adding male Viera and female Hrothgar, and they only did it because of community demand, and that's taking forever. Female Hrothgar, probably the last race and gender that you see added to the game. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello. Hi. Saw the top ultimate and was wondering what the explanation of this ultimate was. I remember in DSR you explained the story of it really quickly. Can you do the same here? So this is basically an escalation of the end of the Omega story. Omega's entire plotline with his Tournament of Power and everything is actually just a... it's just supposed to be like you're an experiment. And when you finally defeat him in the end, it's his experiment failing, but him also gaining somewhat of an understanding of what it was you were trying to achieve. That's kind of like Omega's Achilles heel, is his inability to understand humanity and understand how they are able to pull strength from seemingly nowhere. And, you know, he doesn't understand the soul or the heart because he tries to logic everything. In the Omega Protocol, he starts kind of going down that same path, but through sheer determination and willpower, he suddenly develops not a soul, but he unlocks a latent ability of the world, Dynamis, which is something that is fully explained throughout Endwalker. And with that, he continues to want to run experiments. He wants to understand it. And fun little detail. So in the 5th phase, where he's running the Dynamis program. It's like run Dynamis Sigma, run Dynamis Delta, and run Dynamis Omega. He can't actually spell out the program. It just says like star, 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 MI star. But we know it's run Dynamis. It's the same number of letters, and it's the power he's using. I mean, even the name of the buff we get is Quickening Dynamis, you know? But he can't comprehend it. So he can't even like tell you the full name of the program because he doesn't understand it. And I love that little detail that they use. But it's essentially just what if Omega had unlocked the power of Dynamis and continued his experiment even past that point. All right, and I don't think there's too many questions left, so I'm going to lightning round what is left because I am getting hungry. I wake up at 5:40 in the morning, and it is now 3:30 p.m. I would like to eat. You're probably like, Happy, you should eat before the video. Yeah, but I got to cook. And here's the big thing. You know what it is? I can render this video while I'm cooking. So in my brain, I'm like, it's so inefficient to cook first because then I'm going to have to record and render after when I could overlap them. Oh, yeah. Either way, let me just go through the rest, which my lightning rounds are barely even lightning rounds. It's just no editing required, really. We had a hashtag Mr. Happy Oji-san asking if there's a way to accept their fears for the 7.0 Dragoon rework. Just got to wait and see. Nothing you can do about that. Would it be healthy to gatekeep some jobs, to trying to simplify roles and jobs to the point where anyone could pick up and play is a big discussion? No, I think they do. I think there are jobs that are gatekeeped. It's just a matter of what that gatekeeping means. Like Black Mage is considered kind of like a gatekeeped job. It's hyper mobile and hyper accessible, but people are so afraid by it. Whereas Red Mage, a job that is considered like easy and more accessible, has bigger issues with mobility and people misplaying it, but it doesn't have that perception. Then you have Summoner, which everyone just gets told if you want to play it, just press your buttons and you won't have any issues. Then you have, you know, the RNG of Dancer, the song balancing of Bard, Machinists. I don't really know what's stopping people from playing. Ping used to be the issue, kind of still is, I guess. I think there are things that gatekeep each job, but the bar for that gatekeeping is lower than it ever has been for most of them. So, and Monk too. I know a lot of people who won't touch Monk, who are afraid of it. I know people who don't want to touch Reaper because of the gauge, how important the gauge is, and the double whatever it's called, their speedy phase, the double communion. Communion is not the name of the phase, but that's the name of the final ability. The double communion buff windows being intimidating. People who don't like Dragoon because it's got too many OG CDs. There is something that gatekeeps all of them, even through all the homogenization, which is why you have everyone who has favorites and also things that they don't like to play. We have an Octopath Traveler one here that say they never managed to get very far in the game. There's a lot of things I love. My issue seems to stem from the narrative and how fragmented it is. My advice is to just deliberately play through the stories one at a time and not do them in a fragmented manner. Instead of like, I know my OCD is like, oh, do all the chapter 1s, do all the chapter 2s, then do all the chapter 3s. I'm not playing Octopath 2 that way. Octopath 2, I did all the chapter 1s to get everyone's character. And then I'm now playing through all of them all the way through one at a time to make sure that that doesn't happen. So, yeah, that would be my recommendation, is to focus on one story at a time. And eventually lose interest every time. You can Octopath, you just need to understand what makes you strong. Again, levels don't really make you strong. Gear and understanding how to use the characters is the thing that makes those. Somebody tried asking me if Octopath 2 was actually a hard game because Octopath 1 was so easy. Octopath 1, like I said last week, Octopath 1 does not mess around. It really puts the numbers against you, because that's how you make RPGs difficult, in my opinion, most of the time, is to just make numbers bigger and make them more threatening. And Octopath 1 does that in spades. It's just a lot of us who play it go around and steal everything from every town, do every side quest, unlock all the side jobs before we even do chapter 2. So we do it to ourselves. So this is more of like the experience I expect people to have. And realistically, you just need to take your time to understand what makes you strong in the game, utilize some of those systems without utilizing them over much. So go in, steal some items from some NPCs. If you see something that's really valuable, be willing to do stuff like save scum, explore some areas maybe you don't belong, see if you find anything without dying. You can do all those sorts of little things that are kind of not sequence breaking, but you're going to places earlier than the game kind of intends you to go there. And you can find a lot of power and just do a lot of exploration and experimentation. That's the big thing with the Octopath games. They're very much about exploration and trying things out until you find something that makes you feel strong and works for you, or just works against a specific boss. It's much more trial and error, I feel, than a lot of other RPGs. Even if once it clicks, you will demolish bosses in Octopath, I think, faster than almost any other RPG, except maybe the final bosses. In light of President's Day, who's your favorite president? I don't have a favorite president. I don't give a shit. I don't give enough of a shit to have a favorite president. Which data center has the fastest queue for PvP? No idea. Can't answer that. I'm going to say... Actually, I know Primal was popping pretty hard for PvP for a while, but I don't know if it still is. So that's about as much input as I have for that one. What's your take on having Blue Mage in PvP? No. If you're going to have Blue Mages PvP, it needs to only be against other Blue Mages. That's it. Now, for that would be cool. They've even talked about doing a Blue Mage Battle Royale where you have to learn and pick up abilities on the map and then slay other people. But I don't think they're ever going to do that. They're the ones who suggested it, but I don't think they're ever actually going to do that. No question, just a comment really. Don't you dare sell yourself short on the quality of your content. I will sell myself short as much as I damn well want to. I am currently skipping through questions just so I don't have to edit the video as much. I'm going to question the quality. How dare you? You said you doubt they'll ever expand on the limited job system, but I think it's a little negative of thinking since we don't actually know much about the limited job system. Do you know why we don't know much about the limited job system? Because it was incorporated in 4.55 and was almost abandoned immediately. They did one update fairly soon after, and it's been so sporadic. And if it was something that they had good, like big plans for or better intentions for, they would have done something by now, in my honest opinion. And they don't. So I think Blue Mage has no future in 14, and the limited job system is not popular enough to warrant it. I like it, but it's so sporadic and feels largely abandoned to the point where putting hope in it feels misplaced. And I think that might actually be the last one. Yeah, the rest of them are just comments. I could have swore, by the way, last week that I mentioned Ellentill when it came to the warrior of like the Final Fantasy 1 references. If not, then I thought about it and didn't say it because I felt I was like, oh yeah, that's right. How could I forget that? And then I guess, I don't know, people are saying like I didn't say it, so I guess I didn't say it because I know I thought in my head after I was done recording like, oh yeah, it's a good thing I mentioned that because they would have roasted me if I didn't say that. And so I guess I just didn't. I guess I blacked out and just misremembered the whole damn thing. But either way, I saw those there. I saw someone else saying you should get some rest before the videos. No. When I'm tired, it's normally because I've got a lot going on, not because I didn't sleep. It used to be because I didn't have my CPAP, but since I got my CPAP, my quality of sleep is through the heckin' roof. And so, no, it's always just because I've got a ton of stuff going on, and I don't like to take naps in the afternoon because that feels wasteful of my time when I could be doing something more productive. So thank you for your concern, but I'm doing all right. Anyway, that is going to be a wrap for this week's weekly Q&A. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And for any of the videos I post in the coming weeks, be sure to give them a look. Be sure to give them a like. Because like I said, I don't know what's going on with the YouTube algorithm, but it just feels like my videos aren't being, I don't know. It just feels, something feels off, and I don't know what it is. So if you could show that extra support to those videos just by watching them, interacting with them, I would appreciate that a lot. And be on the lookout for that big announcement thing on Wednesday. Either way, that's going to be a wrap for me. I will see all of you in the next week. Be sure to ask your questions in the comment section below. That's how I pick them. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye-bye.